Centre of increasing tensions in the South China Sea, where several countries are competing to lay claim to the region and the strategic sea lanes there.
In his 2019 State of the Nation address, President Rodrigo Duterte firmly reaffirmed the country's sovereign rights over the West Philippine Sea. He stated, quote, "The West Philippine Sea is ours." He emphasized that the nation's honor and territorial integrity shall not be compromised, highlighting the importance of upholding the Philippines' claim amid rising tensions. However, in swift response, the Chinese embassy in Manila issued a strong statement rejecting the validity of the Philippines' claim, particularly those anchored in the 2016 Hague ruling. The embassy stated, quote, "China firmly opposes and will never accept any claim or action based on the aforesaid report." The Chinese side maintained that both parties have reached a consensus on properly handling the maritime dispute and warned that challenging this so-called understanding could severely impact bilateral relations. As tensions continue to simmer, the contrasting positions of both governments highlight the deepening divide over the contested waters, raising critical questions about sovereignty, diplomacy, and regional stability of the Southeast Asia.
In the 2014 position paper by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, according to the People's Republic of China, this document explains why China refused to participate in the arbitration case filed by the Philippines regarding the West Philippine Sea. In this paper, China claims indisputable sovereignty over the South China Sea based on historical rights and past agreements with neighboring countries. It rejects the authorities and the International Tribunal that insists that disputes should be resolved through bilateral tasks, not through global legal bodies. This position paper clearly favors China's perspective, ignoring the legal arguments made by the Philippines and downplaying the international law like UNCLOS. Although the arbitration later ruled China's claims invalid, China rejects the outcomes and continued its activities in the disputed areas. This shows a clear contradiction between legal ruling and China's actual actions. In summary, this source reveals China's legally justifies its claim, while exposing the ongoing tensions between national interests and international laws.
For the primary source number 3, in this image, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris is expressing strong support for the Philippines amid rising tension in the West Philippine Sea, stating that the United States must stand with the Philippines as it faces China's repeated provocations, reaffirming America's commitment to uphold international law and defend its allies against what she described as China's intimidation tactics in the region.
In 2013, the Philippines filed a case against China under UNCLOS, challenging China's maritime claims in the South China Sea. Despite China's refusal to participate, the Permanent Court of Arbitration ruled in 2016 that China's 9-dash line had no legal basis and that it violated the Philippines' exclusive economic zone rights. The case marked a major legal win for the Philippines and reinforced the authority of international law in maritime disputes. So the following are the key points of the statement: that the ruling affirmed the Philippines' sovereign rights and invalidated China's expansive claims. It also showcased how smaller nations can use legal means to challenge powerful states. However, China rejected the ruling and continues its activities in the region. The decision highlights the gap between legal outcomes and geopolitical enforcement. Limitations and contraindications of the statement are the following: that its ruling is binding but it lacks enforcement mechanisms, and also it overlooks broader regional dynamics and China's ongoing defiance.
A statement before the Permanent Court of Arbitration. Why the Philippines brought this case to arbitration and its importance to the region and the world. So China's historic rights on the 9-dash line has no legal basis for maritime claims. Certain maritime features China uses to assert EEZ rights, also known as exclusive economic zones, don't qualify under Article 121. China unlawfully interfered with Philippine sovereign rights through fisheries and navigation. China caused environmental harms through large-scale reef destruction. This demonstrates how the Philippines leveraged UNCLOS and international legal mechanisms through the PCA to challenge a much larger power. Reinforces the power of rule-based international order, wherein small states can rely on international arbitration for legal clarity and legitimacy. This highlights the international community's role. PCA functions under UN umbrella, providing a neutral platform for maritime disputes. This emphasizes environmental damages, which broaden the dispute from sovereignty to global ecological responsibility.
According to the news analysis from CNN World published by Kathleen Magramo on September 29, 2023, this article discusses the rising conflict in the South China Sea, which focuses on China's aggressive maritime claims that overlap with the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, which is also known as the West Philippine Sea. China continues to reject the 2016 Hague ruling and invalidating its 9- claim, asserting historical rights over the area. Its interest in the West Philippine Sea stems from the region's rich natural resources, such as oil and gas reserves, strategical location, and the desire to expand its influence and control in the sea lines. Controlling the West Philippine Sea, which China now calls South China Sea, gives a significant advantage in both commerce and security across the Indo-Pacific.
According to a report from Reuters dated June 15, 2025, Chinese naval and air forces conducted joint operation in areas near the Philippines, claiming they are defending what they call their undisputable sovereignty. The patrols are part of China's effort to assert control over territory marked by its controversial 9- line, a claim that overlaps with areas owned by other countries including the Philippines and Vietnam. Despite the 2016 international ruling that rejected China's historic claims, Beijing continues to reject the decision, insisting the dispute should be resolved through direct one-on-one talk. Analysts say this increased patrols risk the risk of tension and misunderstanding in one of the world's most strategic maritime routes. A study by Clive R. Simons, published in 2017, argues that China's reliance on historical rights, as shown in its 9- line map, conflicts with United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Simons explained that under UNCLOS, coastal nations are granted a 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. China's 9- line, however, cuts deep into these zones, including areas legally belonging to other countries like the Philippines and Vietnam. While China defends its claim based on centuries of fishing and aviation, international law does not support such historical arguments. The debate continues as legal and political tension rise in the region.
Tensions remain high in the South China Sea, a region claimed mostly by China but also contested by the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Taiwan, and Brunei. Since the 1970s, disputes over the resource-rich islands like the Spratleys have escalated. In 2016, an international court ruled in the favor of the Philippines, but China rejected the decision and has continued building military bases in disputed areas. The US and its allies, including Japan, have responded with naval drills and support to countries like the Philippines and Vietnam, aiming to defend free navigation and regional security.
According to experts and international legal analysts, China's position in the South China Sea directly challenges global legal norms. While Chinese officials argue that their claims are rooted in historical rights, reports from the Permanent Court of Arbitration state otherwise. In 2016, the tribunal ruled that China's claims had no legal basis under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. However, several international studies highlight that China continues to reject this decision, creating an ongoing tension in the region. As noted by the scholars, this ongoing defiance raises serious concerns about the future of the maritime law and the regional security.
Looking at both primary and secondary sources, several contradictions and biases become clear. First, let's consider primary sources such as official government documents and statements. While these sources provide first-hand accounts, they often present one-sided perspectives. For instance, government statements typically reflect the viewpoint of the issuing party, omitting or minimizing counter-arguments from other stakeholders, particularly from China. Now let's look at secondary sources, which include analysis from scholars and journalists. These sources aim to provide a broader context, but often share similar limitations. Many focus on legal or historical claims, neglecting important geopolitical, environmental, and regional security implications. This narrow focus can lead to an incomplete understanding of the dispute. There are common limitations shared by both primary and secondary sources. One major issue is the lack of enforcement mechanisms. Although the Permanent Court of Arbitration ruling is binding in theory, its practical enforcement is questionable, especially when a major power like China refuses to comply. This raises significant concerns about the effectiveness of international law in resolving such disputes. There is also the absence of multilateral input. Both types of sources often overlook the positions and actions of other regional actors, such as the ASEAN and the UN Security Council. This absence of multilateral input limits our understanding of the dispute's complexity and the various factors influencing it. While primary and secondary sources provide valuable insight into the West Philippine Sea dispute, their biases and limitations remind us of the need for a comprehensive approach. Acknowledging diverse perspectives is crucial for fostering effective dialogue and resolution in this ongoing conflict.
So here are some common biases. Nationalistic framing. Both Chinese, Philippine, and Western sources frame their claims as legitimate and justified, often dismissing the opposing side's arguments or international legal standards. Another is selective use of international law. Chinese sources emphasize historical rights and bilateral agreements, downplaying or rejecting the authority of UNCLOS and international arbitration, while Philippine and Western sources highlight UNCLOS and rule-based order, minimizing historical claims. Lastly, portrayal of actions as defensive or justified. Each side prevents its actions. Examples like military patrols, legal filings, construction, as necessary for sovereignty or defense, while characterizing the other's actions as provocative or illegitimate. So here are common contradictions. A call for peaceful resolution versus assertive actions. Official statements and news reports often advocate for peaceful diplomatic solutions, while simultaneously engaging in activities like military presence, construction, joint drills that escalate tensions. Another is ruling versus on-the-ground realities. The PCA rulings invalidated China's 9-dash line, but China continues to assert control and conduct activities in disputed areas, highlighting a gap between legal outcomes and actual compliance. Lastly, historical claims versus modern international law. China asserts indisputable sovereignty based on history, which contradicts UNCLOS-based legal framework that underpins the PCA rulings and the Philippines' claims.